Hello guys and girls, welcome back to Automation slash BeamNG Drive. We are back again, this time with a slightly different car. Instead of going for a French supercar built in the 70s today, we're looking at a Japanese sedan built in the mid-2000s, loosely based on the Subaru Impreza, also with a little bit of Nissan Skyline thrown in as well. So here is the general breakdown of the chassis before we begin. As you can see here, aluminium, monocoque, galvanized steel, so nothing too crazy expensive. What we're going to be doing today as well is showing off 3 different trim levels of this car. Now I'm thinking of a sort of generic family sedan, like, you know, your Subaru Impreza base models with the 1.6, and then upward to a more off-road orientated model as well. So we'll have something similar to like the Gravel Express that was sold in Japan, where you've got something that's not quite performance trim but is built to handle off-road environments, and we've got a special testing that will come up for the off-road vehicles later. And finally, of course, while not quite a WRX STI or a GTR spec, we will have a slightly more performance oriented model of the car, probably somewhere in the couple hundred horsepower range, as for those people who want to still be money conscious but also have a little bit of performance in their life as well. So without further ado, what we'll do is we'll hop into the speed build, and then we will see you after we've completed the aesthetics portion. Right, so here we go. This is the first speed build on this channel, so let's get right into it. So for this one, it was a case of basically understanding what I was going to base the car on. When I had an idea for a Japanese sedan, I was like, well, there's only one that I really want to do at the minute, and that is the Subaru Impreza from the mid-2000s, though also giving it some influence from Nissan as well, as you'll see when we get to the rear of the vehicle. I played around with the lights for a little bit, then found some better LEDs which are used on the other trim versions of this car, but this was of course the base model we were making, and this will be the theme for most speed builds moving forward, is that you're going to see the base model and then you'll see other trims afterward. And eventually what we'll do is, for some cars, we'll revisit them in the future where I speed build like a variant or something, but for now the variants were so similar to the original, we were I was essentially like, let's just make the one. So as any good base model car goes, it's got lots of fake bits, so you know, lots of plastic on the vents. I even changed those side vents to not even a vent, they're just black plastic. And then originally I had these chrome strips on the grille that I thought that might look cool, you know, a little bit to differentiate it, a little bit of maybe a premium feel. And then I thought, now that looks a bit too 60s American, and changed it to black plastic as well, because if this is a base model car for a commuter who has a boring office job, you need plastic, and more plastic. You just need all the plastic. I think there's probably oil factories running out of plastic in different parts of the world because of how much plastic this car has. And let's take a shot every single time he says plastic. So I originally had the badge as K for Kanari. I then changed it to Takumiya after realizing, wait a minute, that's not the brand, that's the trim model, that's the model of the car, so I had to fix that. Adding some detailing on the bonnet here just to give it a little bit of a bonnet bulge. Again, nothing too serious, just something to really break up the bonnet so it's not just a flat mass of metal. And then of course wipers, very important. I always forget those little details, like the aerial, you know, got door handles going on here as well. I had to actually look up what the Subaru Impreza's door handles looked like from the 2000s just to get this right. I did actually used to own one, but I wanted to double check that I was getting the right door handles put in place. So moving on now to the trim on the side of the door. I was like, well, you want more plastic, we'll give you more plastic, but this time it's actually the same color of the body, so I wanted to have that blend in a little bit. I didn't think that a big black strip down the side of the car would look very good, but I wanted to add something just to break the side of the car up. So did a once over of the vehicle. Now moving on to the rear. This was the interesting bit, because I actually think I could have saved a lot of time here, and I realized going over in post that I could have just used the patches and then coloured them in as light and then put the trim around, but I actually go to the time in this one of making whole cutouts and then putting patches over them, which I then realised in post is very, very wrong, and I could have saved myself about 20 or so minutes of my life, and then also probably a good few gigabytes of storage space on my PC because of this, but we move. So I did originally go for bigger shapes, and then realised when I needed to fine tune the shape a little bit more, I actually needed to cut the big pieces away and go for a more outline and then infill style. So you'll see that here, moving them up, getting them in place, and then making the outline of the lights myself here. Again, I am convinced that this, and people can tell me in the comments that this entire bit was a waste of time, because I could have just put the patches over, coloured them in as lights, and then added bits in post. But yeah, we're here now. And it's the friends we made along the way, right? You know, we live and we learn. So just adding a couple more bigger blocks in here to really cut out the rest of it. Again, I was going more for like a real blend between the Subaru lights and the Skyline lights, and you'll see it when we finish it, but I wanted to make it a bit more unique. You know, I didn't want people to be like, oh, this is definitely a Skyline, this is definitely an Impreza. I wanted to make it a little bit unique. So now adding the top mesh in, I was trying to be clever and do a split design here where I was going to have the seam separate the two halves of the lights, but when that started to cut into the top of the trunk, I eventually went, yeah, no, let's just add it in as one piece. But here we go. So now here comes the circular, you know, telltale Skyline lights. I wanted to make them a little bit smaller than the Skylines one though, because of course they're not really the main feature on the back here. That goes to the actual big lights that we put in earlier. So I wanted to again add the two circular lights. Eventually the outside ones do change to indicators. I realise I've got two sets of reverse lights at the minute, and one of them is changed later. But now going ahead and adding the trim for the lights, and this is the really important bit, just to make sure you've not got any jagged edges, using these little bumper pieces. These things are a godsend. They are really easy to mold, really easy to adjust, and they fit real nice, and from a distance you can't even see the little jagged seams on them, which is super nice. So your lights look a lot more professional that way. Adding in the license plate housing finally with a little bit of plastic, again a little bit more body colored plastic, and a little dump exhaust, just to make sure that people know, hey, this is not a sports car, this is just a family commuter vehicle. Nothing serious going on here, nothing to see here, just a commuter car, nice and friendly for your day-to-day, going to the shops, going to your job, and that sort of thing. So now, yeah, change that to an indicator, and here goes one of my patented basic interiors. Again, I like to make sure that it looks like an interior, but also, you know, I like to make sure that it's not, well, too complicated, right? I don't have time to be faffing around with lots of different interior bits and pieces, individual dials and all that. I just want it to look like, from the outside, you can see it's an interior, and looking in, it all looks pretty nice. I do add some little specific details depending on the car, but for a car like this, nothing serious really needs to be done. It just needs to look like an interior. So there goes your shifter, and that's the car done. So here is the Takumiya Kanari FC, the family edition, you know, the unassuming 1.6 litre boxer, non-turbocharged of course. And then here is the AT, the all-terrain, this time bigger 2 litre dual overhead cam boxer, no turbocharger, but power's bumped to nearly 170. And finally is the one you've probably all been interested in, the R-Type, based on the Subaru Impreza, or at least the WRX. But now we shall move on to the story segment. This is the 2006 Takumiya Kanari, the 5th generation of a name that's been part of Japanese roads and rally stages since the 1960s. Takumiya, based in the city of Numazu, has always had a reputation for doing things a little differently. Boxer engines, oddball trim names, and a surprisingly loyal fan base. The 2006 Kanari, it's all of these in one neat sedan-shaped package. And at the sensible end of that lineup is the FC, a simple rear-wheel drive family car, that's the grey one, powered by a 1.6 litre dual overhead cam flat 4, making just over 100 horsepower. It was straightforward, affordable, and somehow still good enough to win Japanese Car of the Year that same year. These days though, its legacy is a little bit more sideways, because while it was built for school runs and supermarket car parks, it's now a favourite among budget drifters, and thanks to its lightweight rear-wheel drive layout and the fact that you can buy a fairly shagged one for less than the cost of a set of new Michelin Pilot Sports. Then there's the AT, or all-terrain, that's the orange one. This was Takumiya's answer to the growing demand for practical off-roaders and amateur rally-ready cars. It came with a 2 litre boxer 4, this time pushing out 170 horsepower, and featured off-road suspension and Takumiya's standard all-wheel drive system. But more interestingly, it was sold alongside a whole range of factory bolt-ons, turbo kits, superchargers, and even roll cages if you tick the right boxes. It wasn't just rugged, it was quietly ready for rallying, straight from the showroom floor. And then, of course, there's the R-Type, a name with history. It had been part of Kanari family since the 1960s, and by 2006, it had grown into something serious. Same 2 litre engine as the AT, now with a turbocharger, forged crank and pistons, and over 250 horsepower to boot. It'll do 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds and hit a top speed of 153 miles per hour, which is properly quick for a four-door from any era costing less than 50k new. What set it apart though wasn't just speed. The R-Type walked that fine line between daily driver and full-on rally car, and it wasn't as raw as a prep track car, but it still made the right noises, gave you the grip when you needed it, and it didn't mind a little bit of mischief on a twisty road. Together, the three trims tell you everything you need to know about the 2006 Kanari. One car, three personalities, and this is just a small selection of what's actually available. From family saloon to off-road underdog to turbocharged icon. It might not have made headlines in mainland Europe or America, but back home in Japan and in the woodlands of the United Kingdom, it became a quiet classic. And sometimes, that's the kind that lasts. Right then, hill climb time, and with the FC first of all. So this car, as you would expect, it's not the most exciting thing to drive in the world. It gets turned in very well, mind you. It does tend to point into corners pretty good, but besides that, absolutely gutless in a straight line, which you would expect from, you know, a 1.6 litre unturbocharged boxer 4. So as it makes its way through the course, you'll see it points in rather well, like I just mentioned, but in terms of straight line speed, I mean, it's struggling to top 75, so you know it's not going to be setting any records here anytime soon. But again, this was always a commuter car, wasn't it? It was never something that was actually built to go fast. I do dab the brakes a little bit early there, then readjust again. I was not ready for actually how well this thing gets stopped. That's this thing's, I guess, two good attributes. Number one, it's got really good turning, and number two, it's actually got really good brakes. So that really helps this thing out up the hill, especially when it comes to keeping up momentum, which is super important in a low power car like this and on a hill climb like this as well. This last corner here, or rather second to last corner, is always a bit of a killer because you need to know what gear you're going to be in, so you've got enough torque to actually power up the rest of the hill to get to the top. But pretty boring. It's driving it is akin to watching paint dry, but you know, I think for the actual vehicle itself sets a pretty respectable time of 1 minute 11 seconds .350. So that will be the benchmark for a lot of commuter cars moving forward. And now we move on to the AT. So this one was a little bit of a different experience. It actually took me 3 or 4 attempts to get this one right, due in part to not only the softer off-road suspension, but also the fact that it's on off-road tyres. So as you can see there, little lock-up. These off-road tyres, when exported from Automation to Beam, have literally no grip, so you have to readjust. A little bit of a corner cut there, I'm going to allow that. Basically, you have to adjust your driving style for this thing and utilise all of its straight line speed, and understand that you're going to probably lose a lot of speed through the corners because, once again, it's got no grip. Massive lock up there as it comes into Moulcombe, heading around Moulcombe now. You've got to get back on the power. However, the all-wheel drive is helping this thing out considerably, so it will get much better acceleration, and of course it having 70 more horsepower than the FC is going to help it out in basically everywhere. But coming up the hill, as you can see, it's having a slightly better time than the FC, tackling the incline here as we head towards the penultimate corner. Again, I'm managing to bog down just a little bit, but getting back on the power, allowing that naturally aspirated 2-litre boxer to sing as it makes its way to the final corner, and as things flatten out, we head to the finish line. So, like I said before, this was a slightly different driving experience. I actually did prefer driving the FC. This, the AT was not that pleasant, but comes across with the 107 710. And now we head to the big one. This is the R-Type, of course, heading up the hill, that all-wheel drive. Again, this time it's got slightly more bias towards the rear, so it handles a little bit more like a rear-wheel drive car, allows itself to get turned in a tiny bit better than the AT, and as it heads up the hill, you can see it's just able to hug those corners so much better. I mean, it's already doing 20-30 mile per hour faster through these corners than the other two, and of course that almost 12 psi of boost is definitely helping. And this thing as well, you've got a little bit of turbo flutter added. I don't know if you can hear it in the re-recording, but you can hear it while you're playing the game. So absolutely flies around Moulcombe, heading up here. You know, we're getting up to 80, 85 miles per hour as we head towards the Flint Wall. And as you can see, the brakes work beautifully on this one. This one stops on a dime, and because of that all-wheel drive system with a rear bias, it's really able to just throw itself through corners, keep momentum and keep speed. And as it heads up towards the top of the hill now, really gaining speed, and it's just a lovely thing to drive this. I mean, even for an all-wheel drive cars, I know they tend to understeer, but this was just wonderful, and definitely a lot less scary than the Valanche we saw in the previous episode. And this gets a 58 seconds .495, so not even that far behind. And now we move to the track segment. The sentiment of this is like watching paint dry continues with the FC once again. What doesn't help it is the fact that this track is quite long. You know, we've seen from even a faster car like the Veloce in the previous episode that did a 2 minutes and 7 seconds roughly, and you know that's quite a considerable track length. So for a car like this that has just a whiff over 100 horsepower, yeah, you know the straights aren't a lot of fun with this, especially when it's not even really getting to 100 miles per hour. I'm very liberal with the curves there, I've just realised, but you know, we move. It's the only way to really make driving this thing interesting. I will continue to praise this thing's turn-in. It's, for a car on 205s all around, it must have been something to do with suspension tuning, because this thing, actually, as you can see, it will just point and turn. Probably also helps that it's rear-wheel drive and not front-wheel drive. Fun fact, I did actually, the first time I exported this car, I did accidentally make it front-wheel drive and had to go back and correct it because I wondered why it was understeering everywhere. Well, there's your answer. Anyway, so we're heading down the back straight now, and it's still, you know, there's not really a lot to say about it, really. It's just quite a boring car in general. It wallows through corners. It doesn't really have the power to give you a scare. It doesn't really break traction. It's just very composed, and I think in this scenario I'm using composed as a bad thing, because it doesn't really excite me. I mean, it's nice to see that the suspension absorbs the bumps, and through here, to keep any sort of momentum up, I really have to just throw it through these couple of chicanes to give myself some form of entertainment almost. It's a very weird car to drive, it in the sense that, well, it doesn't really feel like you're doing much. You can almost fall asleep behind it, but that's going to be the case with a lot of these commuter vehicles, because they weren't built for racing, were they? They were built to get you to and from work, to pick up your shopping at the weekend, go to Tesco, that sort of thing, and generally just function as a car. Oh, there we go, look, we're breaking traction. Look, whoa, hold on a minute, there we go, there's a drift. There's a, yeah, Arsene came right out there, that was brilliant. That's probably the most exciting thing this car will ever do. I'm gonna be so real. So coming through the final chicane here, again, just chuck it in. Like, it likes it, just chuck it in, and then power out of it, and then throw it around this corner here, and just chuck it out again. That's it. You know, it's a very just blasé kind of beige, unseasoned chicken car, right? It's probably the most I can describe it. The most interesting thing about it is the boxer engine. Anyway, it gets a time of a 2:28.614 as its best time around this track. So, well, as we can see from all the previous times, it's not exactly lightning fast, is it? But that's what you get when you have just over 100 horsepower and you weigh a bit over a ton. So there you are, and we will move now to the R-Type. Now this is far more exciting. I mean, naturally it's the R-Type, so you know, anything that isn't the FC. I'm really dragging the FC today, but I do mean that thing is so boring to drive. The R-Type was a nice breakaway from driving the FC. This is, again, well, with 250 horsepower and all-wheel drive, that all-wheel drive being rear biased, yeah, that's going to make it 10 times more fun to chuck around this track. As we do here, C-Load again, being quite liberal with the curves there, but you can carry almost be flat out with this through that first chicane, which is awesome. So this car, I mean, I know it's got rally pedigree and it's supposed to be, you know, like a WRX GTR or GTST kind of thing, but it really doesn't feel like an all-wheel drive car. It handles too well. It feels like it's on rails basically, and as we come down the back straight here, this thing does manage to get over 100 miles per hour, still pulling very hard, in fact. But then again, we've seen that this can top out at about 150, 155, so it's not a slow vehicle, put it that way. And through the chicanes, handles these with ease, you know, rides the curves lovely, doesn't get up on two wheels, no dramatics. It just, I mean, there's a little bit of understeer here, but that's to be expected with all-wheel drive. Naturally, it's not gonna, you know, if it was rear-wheel drive, then I really wonder how this thing would hook up. But through the chicanes here, just a little bit of a slide through there to help it through, and through here again, like I used the term chuck it through a lot in the previous one, again I'll say it here, chucking it through there. Lovely power out of it, almost getting up to 90 miles, actually over 90 miles per hour before we head to this long, slightly tightening right-hander before we then power into the next, or into the handling section, should I say. And then, again, using the brakes in this car, they are very good. I was pretty caught off guard by how good the brakes are in this car. It stops really well. And through this section, I couldn't really decide whether I wanted to be a second or third for a lot of my laps. In the end, I chose third. It just felt a bit more right. It wasn't, you having to shift less, so you save more time and not shifting. Because this is only a 5-speed manual, not a sequential or anything, then you lose a lot of time if you cock up a shift. So you really want to make sure you get this correct. But yeah, power down to the finish. Really lovely lap from this thing. I think this was only 3 laps it took for me to get a lap that I was really happy with. And in the end, this comes across with a 2 minutes 10 and 3:12, which will be added to its total time and then contribute to its end ranking, contributing to its tier list ranking. So we will now move on to the AT, where we have something a little more special for that one. Since the AT is supposed to be a basically ready from the box rally car, and since its tyres are not suited to track driving, I thought it would be a huge disadvantage on the normal racing circuit, and so instead, still using the Zero Parklands map, they actually have a really good rally course available on this track, so on this map should I say. So we head over to the east-west rally stage to see what this thing can do, and this will be the theme for all cars that are equipped with rally tyres, dirt tyres, that sort of thing. So instead of heading to the circuit, the race circuit, they will head to the rally stage instead, and their ranking will all be lumped together in a tier list called off-road vehicles. So whereas the R-Type and the FC will go into a sedans tier list, like you see in lots of other games, they're categorized by their different body types, but the AT will buck that trend and it will go into an off-road special category for cars equipped with off-road tyres. But this rally stage is incredibly challenging. There's snow physics, there's mud physics, there's even a couple of rocks in some places, so it really is designed to test every aspect of a rally car. There's faster sections, there's slower sections, so again it makes the most of those rally compounds. Lots of handbrake usage, there's a lot of really sharp corners, and this took many attempts. I want to say this was like my 8th or 9th attempt at this, because it's just, I did a practice run in an Ibishi Pessima rally car, like one of Beam's actual own homegrown cars, but this was the first time doing it in an automation car. There's a big water splash here, which if you carry too much speed on it, you hydroplane right over the top and you just crash into those trees, so you really have to make sure you're getting that right when you go over there. But this car was incredibly tame, surprisingly. It's only 170 horsepower, and that all-wheel drive has a more 50-50 bias than the R-Type does, so it's more suited to off-roading, and with that in mind, it can easily pull itself out of corners. You can yank the handbrake and toss it around. It really does reward being driven at 10/10ths essentially. I was very surprised with how nice it drove, considering I have very limited experience with making rally cars in automation to export into Beam. I thought it handled really well. I really enjoyed driving it, and considering I really didn't like driving it on the tarmac, I loved driving it on the rally stage, so maybe I just had to find out where this car was best and take it there instead. So yeah, and this is, I don't rally, it sounds like heresy, I don't actually rally too much in this game, but I'm really looking forward to actually making some more rally or dirt cars, Dakar stuff, because I would love to bring some more vehicles here and see how they stack up against the AT, because yeah, this was a blast. This was a lot of fun. You can see here I almost bin it, so there's probably like a couple seconds lost there, but to be fair, like, this course is so long and rally stages are unpredictable anyway, I'm going to leave it there. So it gets a 3 minutes, 2 seconds and 40 milliseconds. So now we shall move on to their final rankings. We finally reached the conclusion of this much longer video, and here we have the final rankings for these 3 cars and where they sit. And now we've got a little bit of an updated look. We can see what things like the Goodwood Hill Climb look like. Speaking of, here it is. So no surprises here. The R-Type's in first, AT second, and FC in third for these 3. Over, of course, second, third, and fourth overall. So no surprises there. As for the lap times, of course, only the R-Type and the FC competed. Again, no surprises here. Second and third. The Valanche still holding first there. Now is where things get interesting, because we have the rally stage, and of course the AT, the Kanari AT, is going to be sat alone there Hopefully it will be joined shortly by more cars. I hope to make more off-road vehicles soon as well. And then of course we have this tier list, and now because there are sedans involved and also we have 2 cars in this category, then we can split them into A and S tier because they're quite far apart. And finally, of course, we have the off-road tier list for the AT as well. That showing, of course, being the only car to run in off-road cars so far. But that has been the Kanari, the Takumiya Kanari, should I say. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching and sticking with us through this much longer video. Next time, I'm not sure what I'll do. I'm open to suggestions. I have a couple ideas in mind, but I'd love to get you guys' feedback. Of course, likes, comments, and subscribes are always very much appreciated. But thank you so much for sticking with us to the end. If you have done so, give yourself a pat on the back. And I will hopefully see you all again very, very soon. Goodbye for now.